Douluo Continent, Infinite Evolution add points to become a god Chapter 11. Breaking through to level 30 even though the 8-winged black gold dragon was a super spirit beast, its cultivation was only 4,000 years. It could only barely contend with Lai Fu who had the cultivation of a spirit saint. After a stalemate of half an hour it gradually began to show signs of decline. Possessing considerable intelligence, it knew it had kicked a steel plate. With a roar it erupted with its full might, throwing 3 wind blades at Lai Fu in a desperate, life-risking stance. Li Fu did not take the attack head-on. He dodged nimbly, his body tense, prepared at any moment for the 8-winged black gold dragon to charge in for a final struggle. Roar! The 8-winged black gold dragon roared at the sky and glared viciously at Lai Fu, memorizing his appearance. Then its 8 massive jet black wings flapped violently as it turned to flee. It was not a hot-blooded beast. To fight to the death knowing it was outmatched was a stupidity called being hot-blooded. Fight if you can win, flee if you can't. This was its consistent principle. Seeing this scene, Lai Fu was stunned, and Qin Yuan was dumbfounded. Wait, it just roared at the sky and put on a desperate stance. So how did it just run away, seeing that the top-tier spirit ring was about to escape? Qin Yuan grew anxious and hurriedly shouted to Lai Fu, "Uncle Fu, don't let it escape." "I've set my heart on it." Lai Fu nodded immediately upon hearing this. He instantly unleashed his martial soul true body, and a massive shadow leopard appeared, chasing after the 8-winged black gold dragon at high speed. However, Lai Fu soon discovered that the 8-winged black gold dragon with its 8 dragon wings was too fast. He couldn't catch up at all and the distance between them grew wider. Seeing this, Lai Fu's eyes became exceptionally determined, as if he had made a certain decision. It was time to repay the kindness. With a muffled groan, a thick blood-red light suddenly dyed his pitch-black, glossy fur. His speed surged abruptly and his aura also exploded several times over, even rivaling a spirit Douluo powerhouse. The distance between Lai Fu and the 8-winged black gold dragon shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. Before long, Lai Fu caught up. The 8-winged black gold dragon was scared out of its wits, unable to understand how this human speed had suddenly surged so much. What horrified it even more was that this human's strength was far greater than before. It was simply no match for him. Soon, under Lai Fu's powerful offensive, the 8-winged black gold dragon let out a shrill wail. Blood splattered across the sky as its body was nearly torn apart by the shadow leopard that Lai Fu had transformed into. Finally, the 8-winged black gold dragon crashed down, lying in a deep pit at its last breath. Its eyes, as it looked at Lai Fu, were filled with terror and resentment. Li Fu stared at it coldly without saying a word. He turned and left, and before long he brought Qin Yuan over. The 8-winged black gold dragon could only watch helplessly as the human youth approached with a sword. It struggled with all its might to no avail, finally dying in indignation. A deep purple spirit ring slowly condensed above the corpse of the 8-winged black gold dragon, profound and beautiful. "Uncle Fu, protect me while I meditate." Qin Yuan gave the instruction and then excitedly sat cross-legged on the ground to absorb the spirit ring. Li Fu exited his martial soul true body state. His face was as pale as paper, and he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood mist. His aura became exceptionally withered and his back hunched over as if he had aged more than 10 years in an instant. His aged eyes looked at the handsome youth sitting cross-legged in the pit absorbing the spirit ring. His gaze was complex yet relieved, and he smiled inwardly with ease. "Young master's immense kindness, I have finally managed to repay a 10,000th of it." His thoughts drifted back to that night 5 years ago. It was Qin Yuan who gave him the chance for revenge, allowing him to avenge all his deceased loved ones. At that time he had sworn to serve this child with his life. Suddenly, he let out a muffled groan as blood seeped from the corners of his mouth. His face turned even paler and his body swayed until he collapsed to the ground, panting heavily in weakness, looking heavily injured and on the verge of death. "I've grown old and useless after all. I hope I can hold on until the young master leaves the Star-Dew Great Forest." Lai Fu laughed self-mockingly. Immersed in refining the spirit ring, Qin Yuan was unaware of Lai Fu's condition. He only discovered with surprise that the spirit ring of the 8-winged black gold dragon, despite only having 4,000 years of cultivation, was much more difficult to refine than the 3-clawed dark gold dragons, putting him under great pressure. As expected of a super spirit beast, Qin Yuan felt both emotional and excited. He knew that his second spirit ability would likely exceed his expectations. 3 hours passed, and the sky gradually darkened. Qin Yuan finally completely absorbed the 8-winged black gold dragon's spirit ring. His spirit power began to climb once more, level 26, level 28, level 29. Unsurprisingly, his spirit power easily broke through to level 30 ultimately. His spirit power level settled at level 32 at the same time. Information about his second spirit ability automatically surfaced in his mind. Second spirit ability Golden Dragon God Transformation increases all attributes by 100% with no negative side effects lasting for 1 hour. All attributes increased by 100%? Even though he had expectations, Qin Yuan was still deeply shocked. He clearly remembered that in the original story, Oscar's fourth spirit ability, the stimulating pink sausage, only increased all attributes by 10% after consumption with no side effects, and that was already something extremely shocking. Yet his was a terrifying 100% increase to all attributes, also with zero side effects. Qin Yuan jumped up in excitement. As expected of the spirit ring from the super spirit beast, the eight-winged black gold dragon, just as he couldn't wait to share his joy with Lai Fu, he suddenly noticed that Lai Fu at the edge of the pit was terrifyingly pale. His aura was as weak as a candle in the wind, liable to go out at any moment. "Uncle Fu, what's happened to you?" Qin Yuan hurriedly stepped forward in surprise and concern. Young master, it's nothing," Lai Fu said weakly with a smile. "It's just that Lai Fu can no longer accompany the young master in the future. Please forgive me, young master." Hearing this, Qin Yuan was silent for a moment before suddenly sighing. "I knew that when Uncle Fu's might suddenly surge to deal with the eight-winged black gold dragon, there couldn't be no side effects. I just didn't expect them to be so massive. This was an oversight on my part. Young master, this is my own fault. It has nothing to do with you," Lai Fu said hurriedly. Uncle Fu, you are my first guard." Qin Yuan suddenly chuckled and said, "I can't let you die just like this." "Young master, Lai Fu opened his mouth, hesitating. Qin Yuan said nothing. He only smiled and slowly raised his right hand, pressing it against Lai Fu's hunched back. He circulated his spirit power, and a cluster of white light dense to the extreme emerged from his palm. This white light was gentle, warm, and sacred, filled with an extreme vitality and purification power. Even the goddess of life would be speechless with shock upon seeing it. The white light poured into Lai Fu's nearly dead body. His body, which was on the verge of losing all vitality, was like parched earth receiving rain, rapidly becoming vibrant with life. Even his old injuries were rapidly recovering and healing. Li Fu's old eyes instantly widened and his mouth fell open. He froze in place, shocked and horrified. What is this?" Looking at the dumbfounded Lai Fu, Qin Yuan smiled faintly. "You can understand it as a type of healing spirit ability." Healing spirit ability? Lai Fu had never seen a healing spirit ability that could even replenish one's life force. Qin Yuan did not explain in detail. After all, the miracle of life was a divine talent he had obtained along with his golden finger panel. Although it wasn't a spirit, its effects were truly heaven-defying. Chapter 12, External Spirit Bone Miracle of Life's effect was heaven-defying, but its consumption of spirit power was also extremely terrifying. In less than 3 seconds of use with his spirit power as high as rank 30, more than half of it was consumed. Seeing that his spirit power was about to run dry, Qin Yuan pulled back his palm and said, "I'll continue healing you once my spirit power has recovered. Do not tell anyone about this. Rest assured, young master." Hearing this, Lai Fu nodded hurriedly, his eyes looking at Qin Yuan with even more gratitude while a deep look of shock lingered in the depths of his gaze. Let's go. We'll search for spirit beasts while recovering spirit power." Qin Yuan nodded and set off. Still looking for spirit beasts? Lai Fu was stunned for a moment. "Otherwise, I'm already rank 30, Qin Yuan said lazily without looking back. "Our rank 30? Lai Fu's old eyes widened as he cried out in alarm, standing frozen on the spot. Having just been on the brink of death, he hadn't noticed his young master's spirit power rank. He hadn't expected him to break through the rank 30 threshold so quickly. It had only been a few days since he broke through rank 10, and now he was at rank 30. If others found out, their jaws would likely drop in shock. Li Fu caught up to Qin Yuan, who had already walked quite a distance, his old face still etched with shock. Qin Yuan ignored Lai Fu's shock and silently recovered his spirit power while wondering what his third spirit ring would be. Just then, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his back. His brow furrowed deeply and a look of agony appeared on his young face as he couldn't help but let out a cry of pain. "Young master, what's wrong?" Hearing Qin Yuan's cry of pain, Lai Fu rushed over, asking with concern. Qin Yuan was in too much pain to respond. His knees slammed into the ground and his hands clawed at the earth, plowing 10 finger marks into the ground as pain cries escaped his throat. Li Fu paced around Qin Yuan anxiously but didn't know what to do. He couldn't even see any injuries on Qin Yuan, and even his clothes were perfectly intact. My back feels like." Qin Yuan spoke with difficulty. "Something is trying to burst out. It hurts so much." Hearing this, Lai Fu's old eyes snapped to Qin Yuan's back. He didn't see anything at first, but in the next second the clothes on Qin Yuan's back were suddenly pushed up by something. Rip! Immediately following was the sound of the clothes on his back being torn apart. Under Lai Fu's shocked gaze, 8 golden wings abruptly appeared on Qin Yuan's back. These 8 wings were identical to those of the 8-winged black gold dragon. The only difference was that the dragon wings on Qin Yuan's back were miniature versions of the 8-winged black gold dragon's wings, and their color had changed from pitch black to golden. This is a spirit bone," Lai Fu said in disbelief. Once the 8 dragon wings burst from his back, Qin Yuan's pain stopped abruptly. He panted heavily and activated Miracle of Life to quickly soothe his uncomfortable body. He straightened up and turned his head to look at his back. seeing the 8 golden dragon wings growing from him as if they were a natural part of his body. With a thought, he tried to flap the dragon wings. As a result, the 8 wings actually flapped. However, being unfamiliar with them for the first time, he used too much force and his whole body flew up, hurtling toward a giant tree. Seeing his face about to slam into the giant tree, he subconsciously unleashed the spirit ability that had just appeared in his mind. Just as he was about to hit the tree, Qin Yuan, who was about to crash, vanished. Li Fu, who had rushed over to protect Qin Yuan, was stunned for a moment before hurriedly searching for his young master's whereabouts. Oh, holy shit, what's going on? Holy shit. Qin Yuan's startled cry came from above. Li Fu instinctively looked up and was astonished to find that his young master had somehow appeared in the air and was in free fall. Li Fu extended his arms and moved back and forth below, trying to catch Qin Yuan. As the ground rushed up to meet him, Qin Yuan instead calmed down and flapped the 8 dragon wings. Qin Yuan's comprehension was extraordinary. He learned everything exceptionally fast. Drawing from the experience of his first failure, he adjusted the force of the wings flapping and actually managed to slowly halt his descent. Finally, after wobbling back and forth in midair a few times, he successfully stabilized himself. Qin Yuan breathed a sigh of relief. Having mastered the method of using the dragon wings, he tilted his head to look at the 8 wings behind him. After a moment of contemplation, a thought occurred to him. A spirit bone that didn't belong to the 6 standard body spirit bones, that was an external spirit bone. Qin Yuan marveled. I just absorbed my second spirit ring and actually obtained an external spirit bone. What kind of heaven-defying luck is this? Moreover, this external spirit bone has granted me a top-tier spirit ability, teleportation. This teleportation had no distance limit. The more spirit power consumed, the further the distance. Theoretically, as long as he had enough spirit power, he could even teleport directly from the Stardew Great Forest to Heavendew City, which was thousands of miles away. Qin Yuan was overjoyed. He loved this skill. It could be said to be one of the skills he wanted most. Furthermore, besides the teleportation spirit ability, this external spirit bone also granted him the ability to fly. With all 8 dragon wings flapping simultaneously, his speed would likely be even faster than those with flying spirits. After a few moments of pleasant surprise, he pondered for a bit, turned his head to look at the 8 wings, and smiled. From now on, I'll call you Golden Dragon Wings. Immediately after, he summoned his status panel. Name: Qin Yuan. Age: 12. Spirit: Golden Dragon Spirit Power. Rank: 32. Spirit Rings: 3-clawed Dark Gold Dragon Spirit Ring 6,324 years, plus 8-winged Black Gold Dragon Spirit Ring 4,444 years, plus Spirit Bone Golden Dragon Wings 4,444 years, plus skills. Way of Chess 9th Dan, 3,234 50000. Way of Carving 9th Dan, 135/50,000 evolution points. 2. He glanced at the spirit power column and noticed that the small plus sign was gone. This meant that 2 evolution points were not enough to increase his level as a spirit elder. Not too surprised, he shifted his gaze down to the newly appeared spirit bone column and chuckled inwardly, as expected. If spirit rings could be upgraded with points, then spirit bones could be too. He gave it a try. By consuming 1 evolution point, the age of the golden dragon wings, just like the spirit rings, increased by 1,000 years. The corners of Qin Yuan's mouth curled up. The future looked promising. He didn't use the last remaining evolution point. He knew that the age of an external spirit bone would increase along with its owner's cultivation, unlike the other 6 major spirit bones, so there was no need to waste it. Afterward, he flew down. Without much effort, he retracted the golden dragon wings into his back, and then led Lai Fu to continue searching for his 3rd spirit ring. Qin Yuan and Lai Fu each wore masks, wandering through the Stardew Great Forest like reapers in search of prey. While searching, Qin Yuan thought to himself, according to my investigations over the past few years, I know that Tang San from Saint Spirit Village is the same age as me, both 12 years old now. However, according to the latest information, Tang San hasn't set out for Shrek Academy yet. I estimate there are still a few months before the official plot begins. I wonder if Rongrong will still join Shrek Academy like in the original work. Qin Yuan rubbed his chin, lost in thought. Since Ning Fengzhe was Zhu King's teacher, he often came to the Heavendew Imperial Palace and brought Ning Rongrong along. Thus, he and Ning Rongrong had known each other since childhood and had a very good relationship, being childhood friends. In the Douluo Continent, there weren't many women he liked, only 3, Qian Renxue, Ning Rongrong, and Zhu Zhuking. He had already built a great emotional foundation with the first 2. As for Zhu Zhuking, they had never met. I wonder if Zhu Zhuking has arrived in the Heavendew Empire yet. Qin Yuan thought to himself. Chapter 13. The hero saves the beauty. Zhu Zhuking felt that she might be about to die. She had long heard that the Stardew Great Forest was extremely dangerous, but she hadn't expected to find herself in a desperate situation so soon. Looking at the 2-headed iron-backed wolf in front of her, its cruel, bloodthirsty wolf eyes and fierce, terrifying aura almost overwhelmed her, making her entire body go cold. She was certain that the cultivation of this two-headed iron-backed wolf had definitely reached over 3,000 years. Roar! The two-headed iron-backed wolf gave a low growl, crouched low to the ground, and its strong limbs suddenly tensed before it pounced like black lightning toward the pale and terrified Zhu Zhuking. Under the state of her hell's Sivet spirit possession, she could barely see the afterimage and instinctively dodged to the side. Bang! A crater appeared where she had been and dust flew everywhere. Zhu Zhuking fled toward the periphery without looking back, her beautiful and refined fair face filled with lingering fear, slightly pale and pitiable. Just then a wolf's howl came from behind, followed by a sensation like thorns on her back. The hair on her entire body stood on end, and a sense of fatal threat flooded her body, leaving her hands and feet cold. Without a second thought, she suddenly dodged to the left. Boom! Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a cyan-black energy ball land where she had been, exploding violently, the residual power and a fierce wind sweeping over her. She was like a black butterfly with broken wings, spitting out a mouthful of blood from her delicate mouth. Her exquisite body crashed into a giant tree, and she spat out more blood as she fell to the ground. Zhu Zhuking felt as if her entire body was splitting apart. The pain was intense, and she couldn't muster any strength, only able to watch helplessly as the two-headed iron-backed wolf approached step by step. The fear of death filled her heart, and those cold, beautiful eyes were now trembling slightly, trembling with unease. Who can save me? Zhu Zhuking let out a prayer-like wail in her heart. No matter how strong she was ultimately just a 12-year-old girl. The two-headed iron-backed wolf gave a bloodthirsty low growl and suddenly pounced toward the fallen Zhu Zhuking, its hideous, bloody maw opening to bite at the girl's fair and slender neck. Zhu Zhuking's beautiful eyes widened in terror, her whole body trembling violently. I didn't expect to run into such a cliché hero saving the beauty plot. Just then, a youth's low chuckle reached her ears. In the next second, a black figure suddenly appeared, reflected in her terror-stricken eyes. His back was slender yet more imposing than a mountain, as if he could shield her from all danger. The youth with the slender and straight back merely raised his right arm as he faced the ferociously pouncing two-headed iron-backed wolf. Dragon transformation. Zhu Zhuking heard the youth whisper those two words, and then she saw his right arm suddenly shine with a dazzling golden light as layers of golden dragon scales rapidly spread from his fingertips to his shoulder like living growth. The youth's right arm had completely transformed into an arm covered in golden dragon scales, beautiful yet filled with explosive power. The hand at the end was a golden dragon claw glinting with a cold luster. The golden dragon claw slowly opened and actually grabbed directly at the pouncing two-headed iron-backed wolf, locking onto its neck under Zhu Zhuking's shocked gaze. The two-headed iron-backed wolf let out a terrified howl because it found that the hand locking its neck was like steel pincers. No matter how hard it struggled, it was to no avail. That terrifying strength was something it couldn't break free from, even with its 3,500 years of cultivation. Then, its two heads opened their mouths toward the human youth, and two cyan-black energy balls were about to gush out. Just then, a deep purple spirit ring suddenly appeared around the human youth, its light shining brilliantly. Following that, the two-headed iron-backed wolf seemed to see a golden giant dragon taller than a mountain appear behind the youth. Those golden pupils, which looked down on all creation with peerless majesty, stared at it coldly, making it tremble. Then the golden giant dragon opened its massive mouth and let out a deafening, soul-shaking roar. Roar. The two-headed iron-backed wolf was instantly stunned on the spot. Its bloodthirsty eyes suddenly became hollow and lifeless, its struggling ceased as if all its strength had vanished, and its body went limp in the youth's hand, its limbs dangling. The cyan-black energy balls in the two wolf mouths also extinguished. This was Qin Yuan's third spirit ability, Golden Dragon Roar. Golden Dragon Roar summons a phantom of the Golden Dragon to emit an earth-shaking dragon roar, intimidating the enemy's body and soul and causing them to lose the ability to resist. At the same time, if the target's spirit power is lower than his own, they are forcibly stunned for 5 seconds. If their spirit power is higher, the duration of the stun depends on the difference in spirit power. This was taken from a 6,000-year-old Titan shaking Sky Roar, which was also a top-tier strength-type spirit beast. At the same time, his spirit power level was impressively at level 37. After absorbing the spirit ring of a Titan shaking Sky Roar with a cultivation of up to 6,000 years, his spirit power directly surged by 5 levels. Glancing at the stunned two-headed iron-backed wolf in his hand, Qin Yuan raised his left arm, which flashed with dazzling golden light. His left arm also underwent dragon transformation, turning into a dragon claw covered in golden dragon scales. With a gentle thrust of the golden dragon claw, the throat of the stunned and relaxed two-headed iron-backed wolf was easily pierced, the claw protruding from the back of its neck. Under the intense pain, the two-headed iron-backed wolf woke from its stun, but it was too late. After a few twitches, it whimpered and became completely still as a purple spirit ring condensed above its corpse. Zhu Zhuking's wide eyes were filled with shock. A two-headed iron-backed wolf with at least 3,000 years of cultivation had died just like that. From the youth's voice just now, she could tell he wasn't old, at most 16, yet he could so easily kill a 3,000-year spirit beast that even a spirit ancestor would find difficult to deal with. Her beautiful eyes shook and her heart was deeply shocked. "Are you okay?" Qin Yuan turned around, his gaze falling on the girl through the golden dragon mask, a flash of admiration for her beauty crossing his eyes. What a beautiful girl! She looked no more than 12 or 13, yet her figure was incredibly hot and curvaceous, especially the bountiful peaks on her chest that seemed ready to burst forth. She truly had a devilish figure, and in a few more years she'd be even more incredible. "Okay," Zhu Zhuqing said, struggling to get up to thank him, but the pain throughout her body made her knit her elegant brows in agony. Seeing the beautiful girl's pained expression, Qin Yuan was about to step forward and use Miracle of Life to heal her, but a thought suddenly flashed through his mind, and as if possessed he asked, "What's your name?" Zhu Zhuqing was stunned for a moment before replying, "My name is Zhu Zhuqing." Hearing this name, Qin Yuan's expression became strange as he thought, "What a coincidence. I was just wondering when I might meet Zhu Zhuqing, and I didn't expect to run into her like this, even saving her life." With the corners of his mouth curling slightly, Qin Yuan didn't use Miracle of Life but stepped forward to bend down and help Zhu Zhuqing up, smiling as he said, "My name is Ling Tian." "Thank you, Ling Tian, you saved my life. I will definitely repay you," Zhu Zhuqing said with earnest gratitude. "Haha, then I'll be waiting for your repayment." Qin Yuan laughed twice, then went to the trouble of supporting Zhu Zhuqing as they walked to one side. Zhu Zhuqing wasn't used to contact with the opposite sex. Even her fiancé had never been this close to her, yet she surprisingly didn't find it repulsive. This made her quite surprised, and not understanding why, she suppressed the doubt in her heart and let the youth wearing the golden dragon mask support her to the side to rest and recover. At this moment, Zhu Zhuqing didn't yet realize that at the critical moment of life and death, that tall and straight back that had stood before her like a savior, shielding her from all harm and danger, had already been deeply etched into the depths of her soul, impossible to forget. Chapter 14. The Upright Gentleman Qin Yuan. "Your injury is very serious and must be bandaged immediately, otherwise it will leave a scar. It just so happens that I have some medicine." In a cave on the outskirts of the Stardew Great Forest, Qin Yuan looked at the pale Zhu Zhuqing with a serious and sincere expression. Hearing that it would leave a scar, Zhu Zhuqing panicked a little. No girl doesn't love beauty, but her injury was in a sensitive area for a girl, and she hesitated for a moment. Her body had never been seen by any member of the opposite sex before. Qin Yuan saw through Zhu Zhuqing's concerns at a glance. He took out the medicine from his storage spirit tool, placed it in Zhu Zhuqing's hand, and said with a smile, "Miss Zhuqing, you can apply the medicine yourself. I'll head out first. Just call me once you're done. I'll be right outside." After saying that, he stood up and left, walking out of the cave without the slightest hesitation or lingering look. Zhu Zhuqing gave Qin Yuan a grateful look. After the young man left, she moved her arm, wanting to undress and change the dressing, but as soon as her arm moved, it pulled at the wound, causing her whole body to ache and letting out a groan of pain. She looked at the medicine in her hand, unable to move, her face showing distress. Outside the cave, a smile played on Qin Yuan's lips as he leisurely tore a long strip of cloth from his clothes and tied it over his eyes, seemingly preparing for something. "Brother Ling Tian, could you help me apply the medicine?" After a while, as expected, Zhu Zhuqing's shy and troubled trembling voice came from inside the cave. "That wouldn't be appropriate. After all, there should be a distinction between men and women," Qin Yuan said, acting like an upright gentleman while appearing conflicted. "Zhuqing doesn't mind." From inside came Zhu Zhuqing's shy voice, contradicting her true feelings. Hearing this, the corners of Qin Yuan's mouth curled up into a successful smirk. He was determined to win over Zhu Zhuqing, and even Dai Mubai wouldn't be able to stop him. When it came to things or people he liked, Qin Yuan never chose to wait. He would take the initiative. Of course, before the relationship reached that level, he naturally wouldn't do anything out of line. At most, he would create a romantic atmosphere for the two of them to be alone, making it easier to cultivate feelings. The cloth covering his eyes was for this purpose. As Zhu Zhuqing, whose pale face was flushed with a faint crimson on both sides, heard the footsteps getting closer, the shyness in her beautiful eyes intensified. However, in her heart, there wasn't the rejection she had imagined. Instead, there was a hint of anticipation which left her feeling a bit confused. What's going on? How could I be so close to a boy I've known for less than half an hour? Zhu Zhuqing didn't know that growing up in the life-or-death environment of the Star Luo Empire had created a sensitive and high-strung personality. Coupled with the flight of the fiancé she regarded as her support, even though she forced her heart to be strong, she still yearned for a powerful person to rely on. And previously, at her most difficult moment, Qin Yuan had appeared and swept away all danger with thunderous methods. This feeling of being protected by a strong person made her heart exceptionally nostalgic and obsessed. It was just that, having been used to being strong on her own, she hadn't realized it yet. Furthermore, the person giving her this sense of security was a member of the opposite sex close to her in age, so she naturally and uncontrollably developed feelings for Qin Yuan and longed for closeness. Qin Yuan entered, but the eyes on his golden dragon mask were covered by a black cloth strip, hiding the specific details. Seeing this, Zhu Zhuking's shy face momentarily froze, then her beautiful face became exceptionally soft and the corners of her full lips tilted up slightly, showing her inner joy. With his eyes covered, Qin Yuan could only roughly perceive Zhu Zhuking's position and could not see the specific areas clearly. He could only have Zhu Zhuking guide him with her voice to avoid touching the wrong place. After several accidental touches, the medicine was finally applied, and Zhu Zhuking's beautiful face had turned bright red. After helping Zhu Zhuking dress, Qin Yuan took off the blindfold and saw Zhu Zhuking's beautiful, snowy face flushed with a rosy hue. It was a blush of embarrassment. He withdrew his gaze and said solemnly, "Zhuking, you've just finished applying the medicine. You can't move during this period, otherwise, if the wound is pulled open, it'll be even easier to leave a scar. So for the next period of time, until your injury heals, we will live here together." Zhu Zhuking was silent for a moment and said somewhat apologetically, "Won't this be too much trouble for big brother Ling Tian, wasting so much of your time for me?" "It's no trouble, I happen to have nothing else to do," Qin Yuan said with a light laugh. Zhu Zhuking lowered her head with a slightly red face. For the next half-month, Qin Yuan and Zhu Zhuking lived together in the cave. Every day, Qin Yuan would change the dressing for Zhu Zhuking, and she went from being shy and troubled at the beginning to having only a bit of shyness. The relationship between the two also went from being awkward to exceptionally familiar, like friends who had known each other for many years. However, the way the girl looked at the boy hid threads of affection. The meticulous care over the past half-month had caused the girl's feelings for the boy to grow deep, but good times always pass quickly. After half a month, Zhu Zhuking's injury had mostly healed and she could walk freely. Early this morning, two figures, a man and a woman, appeared outside the Stardew Great Forest. Under the faint light of dawn, their shadows were stretched very, very long. Walking together, they didn't stop until they reached a fork in the main road. "Zhuking, let's part ways here." After a moment of silence, Qin Yuan raised his hand and pointed to the road on the left. "That is the road to Shrek Academy." Zhu Zhuking bit her jade-like lips. "Big brother Ling Tian, why don't you come with me to Shrek Academy?" "No, I have other choices." Qin Yuan shook his head and refused, then patted Zhu Zhuking's head and stepped onto the other road. Suddenly, Zhu Zhuking lunged toward Qin Yuan, her jade arms tightly hugging his waist, her voluptuous and exquisite body and fair face pressed against the boy's back. White clouds drifted across the sky, obscuring the sun and casting a shadow over the two of them. The two were silent for a long time before Zhu Zhuking spoke, as if gathering all her courage. "Brother Ling Tian, I like you. Do you like me?" Qin Yuan was stunned for a moment and was about to answer that he also liked her, but he was hurriedly and frantically interrupted by Zhu Zhuking, who was afraid of getting an answer that would leave her heartbroken. "Say it now," Zhu Zhuking said, greedily holding Qin Yuan's body tightly. "I will go to Heaven Dew City to find you. When we meet next time, you can tell me the answer." After saying this, Zhu Zhuking directly possessed her spirit and dashed onto the road to Shrek Academy, disappearing in a flash. Looking at the beautiful figure fleeing down the main road, Qin Yuan smiled helplessly. Although he could use teleportation to catch up with Zhu Zhuking at any time, it wasn't necessary. Since Zhu Zhuking wanted to know the answer next time they met, then next time it would be. It could be considered a little romantic playfulness between them. Qin Yuan walked down the other road with his hands behind his head, and the corners of his mouth upturned, returning to Heaven Dew City. At the same time, the golden dragon mask on his face was finally taken off, revealing an incomparably handsome face. Not long after he started walking, a figure darted out from the shadows by the side of the road. It was none other than Lai Fu. "Young master," Lai Fu said respectfully. He had been hiding in the shadows all along and had not shown himself. Qin Yuan glanced at Lai Fu, then looked up at the sun that had emerged, bright and brilliant. Qin Yuan gave an N and said with a smile, "This trip was a success. Let's go home." Chapter 15, Song Qingshuang. Qin Yuan returned to the Heaven Dew Imperial Palace after nearly a month. Upon hearing the news, Qian Renxue rushed over immediately, her face full of anxious concern. Qin Yuan brushed it off by claiming it was difficult to find a spirit beast that matched his spirit ring. Qian Renxue finally let it go but stated that she would personally accompany him the next time he hunted for a spirit ring. Qin Yuan agreed with a grin and then asked Qian Renxue to help him find a swordsmanship teacher. Naturally, Qian Renxue did not refuse. Afterward, Qian Renxue told Qin Yuan to get some good rest. Having lived a life of luxury since childhood and never having suffered, the thought of Qin Yuan wandering outside for nearly a month made her heart ache. He must have endured so much hardship. Qin Yuan was indeed quite tired. After bathing, he slept until the next afternoon. When he woke up, the swordsmanship teacher Qian Renxue had found for him was already waiting in the courtyard. Thus, Qin Yuan began learning his third craft, the way of the sword. As with the previous two times, the terrifying talent Qin Yuan displayed in the way of the sword shocked his teacher, who viewed him as a divine prodigy. Qin Yuan's swordsmanship teacher never imagined someone could progress so rapidly in the way of the sword. Even saying he advanced by leaps and bounds was an understatement. In just 3 days, he he went from touching a sword for the first time to entering the first stage of the way of the sword. In less than a month, his swordsmanship had already broken through to the third stage. While Qin Yuan was immersed in the joy of his rapid progress and the accumulation of evolution points, two people arrived at the palace today, the Duke of the Heaven Du Empire Song Hongtu and his daughter Song Qingshuang. On the way to have an audience with Emperor Xue Ye, Song Hongtu looked at his precious daughter and advised her in a low voice. Xuanzhi, why don't you think about it more carefully? That Qin Yuan has a noble status and is close with Crown Prince Zhu Qinghe. In the future, Father, Song Qingshuang interrupted impatiently, her exquisite face full of displeasure. How many times have you said that? I've told you that Qin Yuan is nothing but a trash with half a level of innate spirit power, while I am a genius with 8 levels. He is the same age as me, and it said he only just broke through level 10 to get a spirit ring, whereas I am already a level 26 spirit grandmaster. Aside from his status, how can he compare to me? I won't marry a piece of trash no matter how noble his status is. But Song Hongtu still wanted to dissuade her. On one hand, he didn't want to offend the imperial family. On the other, he wanted to use his daughter's marriage to Qin Yuan to consolidate his position. However, he also knew his daughter. If he forced her to marry, she would likely run away from the wedding, which would be a much bigger problem and more serious than breaking the engagement. Father, am I really your daughter? Why do you always want to push me into a fire pit? Song Qingshuang suddenly stopped and glared at her father with angry eyes, saying crossly, "Is that Qin Yuan worthy of me? A trash with only half a level of innate spirit power. Among my many pursuers at the academy, I could pick any one of them and they would be 100 times stronger than him. Don't you just want to marry into the imperial family to consolidate your status? Among those pursuing me, there is the son of a duke, a legitimate heir at that, who is much stronger than that trashy imperial relative Qin Yuan. I have no interest in Qin Yuan." Song Qingshuang turned her face away, her expression full of disdain. Song Hongtu sighed at this. Seeing his daughter so resistant to Qin Yuan, he couldn't say anything more. He could only sigh inwardly with guilt. Old brother Qin, I'm sorry. Although I was the one who took the initiative to set this betrothal when they were bobbies, who told your son to be so disappointing. Sigh. Song Hongtu spoke no more and led the arrogant Song Qingshuang to have an audience with Emperor Xue Ye. At this time, Emperor Xue Ye was discussing government affairs with Crown Prince Zhu Qinghe. Upon hearing of Duke Song's visit, he immediately summoned them. Qian Renxue watched Song Hongtu and Song Qingshuang enter the hall. Her gaze fell on the latter, her eyes flickering as she thought to herself, "Why did Xiao Yuan's fiancée come at this time? She isn't here to get married, is she? I was just thinking of finding a reason to dissolve the engagement." She naturally couldn't hand over Qin Yuan, whom she had raised for 12 years, to another woman. Xiao Yuan was hers and no one would take him away. Emperor Xue Ye and Song Hongtu exchanged small talk first. Then, under the constant urging of Song Qingshuang's eyes, Song Hongtu finally braced himself and said, "Your Majesty, I have something to report." "Oh," Emperor Xue Ye said with a smile, "Hongtu, whatever it is, just say it. This is not the royal court, there is no need to be formal." Even though he was the emperor of the Heaven Du Empire, when facing a duke he had to be mindful of the other's feelings to maintain their relationship. "Majesty, my daughter Qingshuang has been competitive since childhood. She is headstrong, arrogant, and lacks etiquette. I feel that she is truly unworthy of young Master Qin Yuan, so." Song Hongtu gritted his teeth and said, "I have come today wishing to dissolve the engagement." Soon as these words were spoken, the entire hall fell silent. Emperor Xue Ye was only slightly surprised, but showed no great shock. Qian Renxue, however, felt a surge of anger. Although Song Hongtu claimed Song Qingshuang was unworthy of Qin Yuan, everyone present knew that it was Song Qingshuang who looked down on Qin Yuan and had come specifically to break the engagement. It was just phrased politely. But alongside her anger, she also felt a bit of joy. Dissolving the engagement was exactly what she wanted. Still, she could not tolerate her Xiao Yuan being rejected by the woman coming to his door. She immediately barked. "Song Hongtu, you have a lot of nerve. To dare break an engagement with the imperial family. Do you want our Heaven Du imperial family to lose all face?" "No, I wouldn't dare," Song Hongtu said hurriedly. "I will announce to the public that it was young Master Qin Yuan who looked down on my daughter and took the initiative to break the engagement. It will not damage the imperial family's reputation in the slightest." "Do you believe that yourself?" Qian Renxue sneered. This. Song Hongtu's face showed his distress. Song Qingshuang was trembling from Qian Renxue's cold and imposing aura. Her arrogance was gone, her face was pale, and her heart was uneasy, fearing that the engagement wouldn't be broken and she would be punished instead. "Enough." Emperor Xue Ye glanced indifferently at Qian Renxue and said, "I grant this request. It is indeed my nephew who is disappointing and unworthy of your daughter. However, King is also right. Hongtu, you shall announce to the public that my nephew took the initiative to break the engagement. The imperial family's face must not be damaged." Hearing this, Song Hongtu and Song Qingshuang looked delighted. Song Hongtu quickly pulled his daughter to bow and said, "Thank you, your Majesty." "Father," Qian Renxue frowned, opening her mouth to say more. "That's enough. My mind is made up. There is no need to speak further of this," Emperor Xue Ye said coldly. "Hongtu, you may withdraw." "Yes, your Majesty." This subject takes his leave. Song Hongtu pulled Song Qingshuang, who could barely hide her smile, and walked quickly out of the hall, fearing Emperor Xue Ye might regret it and not break the engagement after all. After the two of them left, only Emperor Xue Ye and Qian Renxue remained in the hall. Father, how could you agree so easily? At the very least you should have asked for Xiao Yuan's opinion, Qian Renxue said in a heavy voice. Ask for his opinion. Emperor Xue Ye snorted coldly. What is there to ask a piece of trash? King He, between a trash with only half a level of innate spirit power and a duke, you should know which is more important. It is not worth affecting the relationship between a duke and my imperial family for the sake of a piece of trash. I am unwilling to let my relationship with Song Hongtu turn sour because of a piece of trash, do you understand? Emperor Xue Ye stared at Qian Renxue and said, King, I know you have a very good relationship with Qin Yuan, but remember you must not let that trash affect national affairs. After saying this, Emperor Xue Ye stood up, said I am tired, and headed toward the inner palace, ignoring Qian Renxue. Once Emperor Xue Ye had completely left the hall, Qian Renxue's gaze became exceptionally cold and murderous. Old thing, you dare speak of my Xiao Yuan like that? You might as well die sooner. Chapter 16. Spirit fighting. Qian Renxue stood outside Qin Yuan's courtyard, pausing for a long time before finally letting out a soft sigh. I hope Xiao Yuan won't be sad, she murmured as she walked through the gate. Qin Yuan, who was practicing his swordplay, immediately beamed with joy upon seeing Qian Renxue and ran over to her with a wide grin. Looking at Qin Yuan's brilliant smile, Qian Renxue dotingly took a handkerchief from her bosom and wiped the sweat from his brow. After chatting for a while, Qian Renxue finally brought up the matter of Song Qingshuang breaking off the engagement. She nervously observed Qin Yuan's reaction, ready to offer comfort. To her surprise, Qin Yuan's expression remained indifferent. Aside from a flicker of initial astonishment, there was no emotional fluctuation. It's just as well that it's off. I never liked that woman, she was arrogant beyond measure anyway. Hearing Qin Yuan say this, Qian Renxue breathed a long sigh of relief. This was the reaction she wanted most. With a smile on her face, she said, I'm relieved you feel that way. However, for that Song family to dare to take the initiative to break the engagement, this matter will certainly not pass so easily. As she spoke, a cold glint flashed in Qian Renxue's eyes. Qin Yuan shrugged indifferently. It was just a minor interlude, not worth his concern. It certainly wasn't as important as practicing his sword. After seeing Qian Renxue off, he immediately put the matter of Song Qingshuang out of his mind and devoted himself entirely to his sword practice. After 2.5 months of studying the sword, Qin Yuan's spirit power broke through to level 38. This made him marvel at how fast the golden dragon spirit's cultivation speed truly was. Of course, after absorbing his third spirit ring, his spirit power had already reached level 37.5. However, after 2.5 months of study, his way of the sword had reached the 5th stage. His rate of progress had noticeably slowed down, which left him quite dissatisfied. When his sword teacher saw that Qin Yuan had reached the 5th stage of the way of the sword in just 2.5 months and was still unsatisfied, complaining that it was too slow, he nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. He had studied the sword for decades, and even with a sword as his spirit, he had only barely reached the 6th stage. This kid in front of him was practically calling him trash to his face. Could he endure this? Hilarious, he actually could. There was no other way. The boy's status was noble and he wasn't someone he could afford to provoke. Finally, he pointed out a path for Qin Yuan, saying, the sword is a weapon of slaughter. Only through life and death combat can one progress the fastest. Having said that, he laughed loudly and headed for the door, declaring, Young Master Qin Yuan, you have completed your apprenticeship. I shall not return. In truth, he was afraid that if he stayed a moment longer, his mental state would shatter. Having received this guidance, Qin Yuan felt his teacher was right. Thus, he donned a golden dragon mask and under the pseudonym Ling Tian, headed to the Tiandu Great Spirit Arena to hone his swordsmanship. He hid his identity because in the eyes of the world, he was a waste with an innate spirit power of only half a level. If he were to reveal his level 38 spirit power at the age of 12, along with his golden dragon spirit, he feared he would never know peace again. Not just the spirit hall, but even his uncle Emperor Xue Ye would likely covet his power and force him to divulge his secrets. He had already gained a deep understanding of Emperor Xue Ye's ruthlessness and tendency to turn his back on others. Only Qian Renxue would be good to him regardless of the cost. Therefore, until his strength was sufficient to protect himself, he would not expose his true identity. Gazing at the magnificent building before him, which resembled an ancient Roman Colosseum, Qin Yuan, wearing his golden dragon mask, smiled silently and stepped inside. He went to the registration desk, gave himself the codename Ling Tian, and with an iron spirit fighting badge hanging on his chest, he headed to the contestant waiting area. The badge ranks of the Tiandu Great Spirit Arena were divided into iron, bronze, gold, and purple gold. For every victory, 1 point was earned. For every loss, 1 point was deducted. Only upon reaching 10 points could one be promoted to a bronze badge, 100 points for a gold badge, and 1,000 points to reach a purple gold badge. Since the founding of the Tiandu Great Spirit Arena, those who had obtained a purple gold badge were as rare as morning stars. However, every owner was a top-tier powerhouse famous throughout the land, and without exception they were all titled Douluos. Therefore, any spirit master who obtained a purple gold badge would be a target for every power on the continent to recruit with all their might. Even the spirit hall was no exception. Walking into the Seoul arena and passing by the competition grounds, he glanced at the spirit masters fighting fiercely on the stage. Qin Yuan then turned his head and walked toward the contestant waiting area. He didn't have to wait long before his first match began. Qin Yuan did not wear his storage spirit tool to avoid being recognized by those close to him. Carrying only a standard longsword on his back, he stepped onto the stage. The stands were surging with crowds. Shouts and roars attacked from all directions, making his ears sting slightly from the vibration. His opponent was a young man with a bare upper body wearing only black trousers. A scar ran across his face, adding a touch of ferocity and ruthlessness to his appearance. The scarred youth was clearly quite famous. As soon as he stepped onto the field, a roar erupted from the crowd that was dozens, even hundreds of times louder than before. Scar, 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 crush your opponent for me, I've bet my entire fortune on you. The young man thoroughly enjoyed the cheers of the crowd. A sinister smile curled on his lips as he stared at Qin Yuan with a mocking look, raising his hand to make a throat-slitting motion. In order to raise his way of the sword level as quickly as possible, Qin Yuan had signed up for a death match. Hahaha, it seems our contestant Scar is already impatient. But before the match, I must introduce the contestant's information to everyone. At that moment, the announcer's hearty laughter rang out from high above. The contestant Scar on my left is someone I'm sure you're all very familiar with. Scar has won 7 matches in a row, even among the bronze badge contestants in the Spirit Elder realm. He is a powerhouse, and his opponent, well, the announcer suddenly chuckled. This contestant Ling Tian is visiting our Great Spirit Arena for the first time. It seems his luck is really not that good, matching with a bronze badge contestant in his very first match. I can already foresee the result. I hope he doesn't die too miserably. Haha, enough talk, I now declare. The match, begin. Hearing the start of the match, Scar gave a cruel, savage grin and let out a low growl. Spirit possession. In the blink of an eye, Scar's body suddenly swelled significantly. His limbs became robust, and his palms grew as sharp as a wild beast's, making him look like a werewolf. 3 spirit rings, 2 yellow and 1 purple, the optimal configuration, swirled around him. One of the yellow rings glowed brightly as Scar transformed into a literal arrow from a bow, diving toward Qin Yuan. Ha, it seems my contestant Scar is already impatient to tear our poor Ling Tian to pieces. Let us observe a moment of silence for him. Above, the announcer exaggeratedly covered his eyes, looking as if he couldn't bear to watch. Laughter erupted from the audience. There was no pity, only the mockery and excitement of watching a good show. Qin Yuan did not use spirit possession. He simply drew the longsword from his back and went to meet the charging Scar. Is his spirit a sword? The thought flashed through Scar's mind as he looked at Qin Yuan approaching with his blade. But when he realized that the rushing Qin Yuan didn't have the slightest ripple of spirit power, he was momentarily stunned, followed by a cold sneer, seeking death. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the two collided. But instead of a one-sided slaughter, it appeared to be a match between equals. Scar's right claw lunged at Qin Yuan's throat, but it was parried by the longsword. His strength was completely neutralized, and the opponent didn't even sway. Scar cried out in shock. Seeing this scene, the audience and the announcer were also dumbfounded with shock. Chapter 17, Way of the Sword Level 6. It's appeared. The dark horse that showed astonishing combat power in the first match has finally appeared again. High above, the host strained his throat, letting out an excited and enthusiastic shout. This kind of unexpected reversal was what the audience and he loved to see the most. Hearing the host's excited shouting, Scar noticeably frowned, looking very displeased, and he lunged at Qin Yuan again. Qin Yuan still did not use spirit power, facing the all-out Scar. He had not forgotten the purpose of the soul fight. It was to hone his swordsmanship. Once he attacked with full force, he was afraid Scar wouldn't last a single move, failing to serve the purpose of honing his swordsmanship. Of course, only in extremely critical situations would he use spirit power. After all, relying solely on his formidable physical body to fight a high-level spirit elder was still very strenuous. Thus, a very strange situation appeared on the arena. Ling Tian, wearing the golden dragon mask, faced Scar's all-out attacks. Although he fought very strenuously, he never suffered any losses. Even as time passed, Ling Tian fought more and more easily, as if he had adapted to Scar's attacking style. This made Scar extremely uncomfortable and furious. He felt that the guy opposite him was simply his natural counter, as if born specifically to restrain him. As for Qin Yuan, who was fighting Scar, his heart was full of joy and excitement. In just this short while, his Way of the Sword experience points had increased by over 100. But as he fought Scar for longer, the experience points grew slower until finally they almost completely stagnated. Qin Yuan knew that Scar's utility value had been squeezed dry by him. Damn guy, fighting you is so fucking exhausting, it's killing me. Scar roared in extreme anger, his attacks becoming increasingly fierce and ruthless. The audience didn't find it interesting either. They wanted to see bleeding, screaming, and gore. What kind of situation was this? They had been fighting for ages, not even a piece of clothing was torn, it was completely boring, thus more and more audience members voiced their dissatisfaction, urging the match to end quickly. The host was a bit embarrassed, but he was helpless. He could not interfere with the match, at the same time he was also somewhat depressed. This match, other than the initial excitement, became increasingly boring, to the point that even a professional host like him didn't know how to commentate. Just at this moment, sensing that Scar could no longer serve to hone his way of the sword, Qin Yuan stopped holding back and immediately used his spirit power, gathering it in his hands. The angry Scar's eyes instantly cleared, his face revealing terror. He keenly sensed that the opponent was different now, if the previous Qin Yuan was a harmless sheep. Then the current Qin Yuan was a terrifying beast that had suddenly awakened, the fierce and shocking sharpness of his aura pressing down on him so hard he could barely breathe. Wait, Scar opened his mouth wanting to call a stop, but it was too late. Qin Yuan struck with his sword, self-created spirit ability Sword 1, a brilliant, dazzling golden sword radiance carrying a sharpness capable of severing all things, slashed onto the arms Scar had frantically raised to block. Puch! Scar's arms snapped on the spot, blood spraying everywhere. A long, deep, bloody scar tore open across his chest. His entire body, like a tattered blood bag, flew sideways while screaming miserably, falling off the arena. After landing, he twitched a few times on the ground before passing out. But before he passed out, a thought surfaced in his mind that left him terrified, shocked, and confused. Hey buddy, you were playing me, weren't you? Glancing indifferently at the unconscious Scar, Qin Yuan looked around at the dumbfounded, silent audience, then looked up at the equally stunned host. He lifted his chin. Announced the result. Host came to his senses, swallowed with difficulty, and said with a trembling voice, I announce that in this match, contestant Ling Tian wins. Because it was an iron badge defeating a copper badge across ranks, points are increased by 2. Qin Yuan nodded, turned to leave, and said without looking back, that guy is still alive. I deliberately held back my strength. If he receives treatment in time, his arms can still be reattached. After he left, the audience, having recovered from their shock, let out a thunderous roar, but this had nothing to do with Qin Yuan. Qin Yuan only had one match today. After finishing it, he left the Seoul Arena directly and arrived at the inn closest to the Heaven Du Imperial Palace. After closing the doors and windows, he first cast Miracle of Life on himself to prevent any unknown powerhouse from leaving a tracking mark on him. Miracle of Life had ultimate healing and purification effects. No one could leave any mark on him. Afterward, he directly used the external Spirit Bone Golden Dragon Wings Spirit Bone ability Teleportation, consuming about 1/10 of his spirit power to cross a distance of several hundred meters and enter his own courtyard in the Heaven Du Imperial Palace. This way, no one would know Ling Tian's true identity. Those interested in him would at most track him to this inn. They surely couldn't search the Imperial Palace for him. For a long time afterward, Qin Yuan participated in soul fights as Ling Tian. Moreover, at his request, the Seoul Arena arranged at least 5 matches for him every day. In every match, he would suppress his own strength, using his sword to entangle with his opponents until their utility value was squeezed dry, and then he would finish the match by taking them out in one move. Thus, a very strange phenomenon appeared in the Seoul Arena. Even the weakest spirit elder could fight with Ling Tian for a long time, only to be defeated in one move once Ling Tian was familiar with all of their moves. And those silver badge spirit elder powerhouses were also taken out in one move when facing Ling Tian's burst. This made Ling Tian's true strength a mystery. No one knew Ling Tian's true strength, because when Ling Tian got serious, no one could withstand the second move. 3 months later, Ling Tian obtained the gold badge with a perfect record, simultaneously becoming famous and causing a sensation in Heaven Du City. Almost all factions knew that a young man with exceptional talent had recently arrived at the Great Spirit Arena, almost comparable to Heaven Du City's #1 genius, the top prodigy of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect, Yu Tianheng. Qin Yuan didn't care about this fame at all. At this moment, he was in his courtyard looking at his panel with a face full of smiles. Name: Qin Yuan. Age: 12. Spirit: Golden Dragon Spirit Power. Level 38 plus. Spirit Ring: 3-clawed Dark Gold Dragon Spirit Ring 63. 24 years plus. 8-winged Black Gold Dragon Spirit Ring 44. 44 years plus. Titan Shaking Heaven Roar Spirit Ring 66. 66 plus. Spirit Bone Golden Dragon Wings 54. 44 years plus. Skills: Way of Chess level 9, 3679 50000. Way of Carving level 9, 1289 50000. Way of the Sword level 6, 4896/5000 evolution points, 22. Looking at the skills column, the Way of the Sword was only 104 experience points away from level 7. At most, after 2 more matches, he would have full experience. However, based on past experience, wanting to break through to level 7 Way of the Sword would likely require comprehending the Sword Heart, which would take some time. His gaze moved down to the evolution points column. Looking at the full 22 evolution points he had accumulated, Qin Yuan nodded with satisfaction. He did not add points to increase his spirit power level because he wanted to hone his way of the sword. If his spirit power was too high, there would be fewer opponents he could fight, which was something he didn't want to see. Anyway, the evolution points wouldn't decrease and he could add points at any time. Closing the panel and preparing to return to his room to sleep, Qin Yuan learned from a maid that Ning Fengjai and Ning Rongrong would come to Heaven-Du City in 7 days to visit Emperor Xue Ye and Zhu King. Upon hearing this, a strange look flashed in Qin Yuan's eyes. Chapter 18. The arrogant Yutianheng Heaven-Du Imperial Academy is the top spirit master academy in the Heaven-Du Empire. Whether it was the teaching staff or the cultivation environment, everything was top tier. Yu Tianheng led the members of the Imperial fighting team towards Qin Ming's residence, chatting and laughing along the way. On the way, they heard talk about Ling Tian and phrases like Ling Tian is a top genius comparable to Yu Tianheng. This piqued the interest of Yu Tianheng and the others. After some inquiries, they were surprised to find that a teenage genius had appeared out of nowhere in the Seoul arena, reportedly not even 18 years old. Upon learning of Ling Tian's battle record, Yu Tianheng's expression turned solemn, yet his eyes flickered with battle intent and excitement, showing an eager posture. Beside him, Du Guyan's beautiful eyes moved slightly as she looked at Yu Tianheng with a half-smile. Tianheng, it seems you might not be able to keep your title as Heaven-Du City's #1 genius. The other team members also teased their captain one after another. Humph. Yu Tianheng snorted coldly, his chin slightly raised as he said arrogantly, a genius who can surpass me hasn't been born yet. Tomorrow I'll go meet this so-called Ling Tian and see if he truly has substance or if he's just a fraud. Giggle, I'm just afraid you won't be his match and will instead become a stepping stone for his fame. Du Guyan laughed charmingly. You think too highly of him. Yu Tianheng sneered. Just watch, I will trample that Ling Tian under my feet right in front of you, making the reputation he worked so hard for become another halo for me. Advancing to 7th stage swordsmanship requires comprehending the sword heart. Qin Yuan, who is currently fighting an opponent in the Great Spirit Arena, suddenly saw a line of information flash before his eyes. A flash of joy appeared in the depths of his eyes. His swordsmanship 6th stage experience points were finally full. He no longer held back. Amidst the excited and emotional shouts of the crowd, he used a self-created spirit ability to one-shot his opponent, securing the victory. To comprehend the sword heart, simply participating in spirit fights wasn't very helpful. He needed to meditate on the sword, which required battling top swordsmen. Therefore, after defeating his opponent, he prepared to leave the Seoul arena, before comprehending the sword heart. He would not return to the Seoul arena unless a top swordsman appeared there. But just as he was about to leave, a voice that was casual yet contained a provocative undertone came from the seating area. Ling Tian, do you dare to fight me? Qin Yuan paused in his tracks and turned to look. He saw a handsome, slender young man in the first row of the western seating area, sitting leisurely with his arms crossed, staring at him with a provocative half-smile. Hearing that someone actually dared to challenge Ling Tian, the audience instinctively looked over. Their eyes widened and they cried out in surprise, "It's Yu Tianheng!" Excited and emotional shouts erupted from the audience. Yu Tianheng really came. I knew there would be a battle between him and Ling Tian. I wonder which of the two is stronger. Heh, is there even a need to ask? It's definitely Yu Tianheng, just look at how many years he's been famous. Bullshit, I think Ling Tian is stronger. No one has been able to force out his true strength yet. Humph, you'll find out in a moment. In a VIP room on the 2nd floor of the Seoul arena, Song Qingshuang's beautiful eyes brightened slightly as she smiled and said, I originally came for Ling Tian's reputation, but I didn't expect to witness a battle between senior Yu Tianheng and Ling Tian. What a pleasant surprise, she then remarked with emotion. However, that Ling Tian is truly terrifying. He's clearly not many years older than me, yet his strength is as unfathomable as a deep sea, just like senior Yu Tianheng. I wonder which family's prodigy he is. With such talent, I'm afraid even I can't compare to him. Well, let me see whether senior Yu Tianheng is more powerful or if you Ling Tian are superior. Song Qingshuang looked down with anticipation in her beautiful eyes. Withdrawing his gaze, Qin Yuan shook his head and said, Sorry, I don't have time. Now that his swordsmanship 6th stage experience was full, continuing to fight before comprehending the sword heart was meaningless. He wouldn't waste time on such a petty dispute. He turned to leave, but just then Yu Tianheng's sneer came from behind. Are you afraid? Qin Yuan ignored him and continued toward the exit. It seems he's just a coward. How disappointing, Yu Tianheng mocked with disdain. Tianheng. At this moment, Qin Ming, who was beside Yu Tianheng, frowned and scolded him. As a teacher, how could he tolerate his student becoming an impolite person? I'm just speaking the truth, Yu Tianheng said, seeing that there would be no good show. Du Guyan and the others all showed looks of disappointment. The audience also sighed. What did you just say? At that moment, Qin Yuan stopped in his tracks, turned around and narrowed his eyes at Yu Tianheng, who still had a mocking smile on his face. I said you're a coward. Yu Tianheng didn't back down, meeting Qin Yuan's gaze with a half-smile. The atmosphere suddenly became tense and hostile. Everyone in the audience, including Du Guyan and her companions, as well as Song Qingshuang in the 2nd floor VIP room, held their breath and looked at the two with expectant eyes. Heh. In the silent and tense atmosphere, Qin Yuan let out a light chuckle. Without saying a word, he simply tapped the ground with his toes and flew onto the stage, looking at Yu Tianheng below. Come up, I'm in a hurry. As soon as these words were spoken, a terrifying light suddenly burst from the eyes of everyone present. This battle was finally happening. Hee hee, you do have some courage after all. Yu Tianheng gave a faint smile, leaped up, and jumped directly from the audience seats to the stage. Standing opposite Qin Yuan, watching this scene, Qin Ming sighed inwardly, but he couldn't help but show a look of anticipation. After all, battles between top geniuses were very rare. Only during the Spirit Master competition 2 years from now would one be able to watch such fights to their heart's content. Song Qingshuang, Du Guyan, and the others were fully focused, staring unblinkingly at the two on the stage with intense anticipation in their eyes. Which of the two was actually stronger? Referee announced the start of the match. Yu Tianheng looked up at the host above, somewhat impatiently. He was eager to show off his skills and display his heroic bearing in front of Du Guyan and teacher Qin Ming. Upon hearing this, the host immediately shouted in a cracking voice, "I announce the match begins, Spirit Possession." Yu Tianheng immediately used his full strength, wanting to end the battle cleanly and efficiently. Watching Yu Tianheng charge forward with 3 spirit rings binding around him, Qin Yuan drew the cracked longsword from his back and casually threw it at Yu Tianheng. Facing me, and yet you dare to let your spirit leave your body. Heh, you're looking for death. Yu Tianheng sneered with disdain, then reached out his right hand, which was binding with purple lightning, to grab the longsword. Crack. The longsword, unable to withstand the pressure, shattered into several pieces. Who had always believed Qin Yuan's spirit was a sword inhaled a cold breath upon seeing this. Yu Tianheng had actually crushed Ling Tian's spirit directly. Was the gap between them really that large? As expected, Yu Tianheng lived up to his reputation as the long-famed #1 genius of Heaven Du City. Below the stage, Song Qingshuang, Du Guyan, Qin Ming, and the others all showed looks of disappointment. They had thought it would be an evenly matched, fierce battle. They hadn't expected it to be a one-sided, crushing defeat. How boring, ha ha ha, even your spirit has been crushed by me. How are you going to fight me now? Yu Tianheng laughed mockingly as he charged, his eyes full of ridicule and playfulness. Chapter 19, Do You Admit Defeat? Watching Yu Tianheng dive towards him, surrounded by purple lightning, Qin Yuan also transformed into an arrow, leaving the bowstring, meeting him head-on. Dare you take the initiative to attack when your spirit is shattered? You overrate yourself. Yu Tianheng sneered as a purple spirit ring lit up around him. Third spirit ability, Thunderous Fury. Yu Tianheng's third spirit ability was a self-buff. Upon activation, he would enter a berserk state for a certain period, increasing his lightning power by 100% and his spirit power by 50%. In an instant, Yu Tianheng's aura surged dramatically. His gaze toward Qin Yuan became even more mocking and contemptuous. Don't worry, it's just a spar. I won't kill you, but you won't escape some physical suffering. You talk too much. Qin Yuan, who had already closed the distance, suddenly had a layer of brilliant gold light emerge from the depths of his pitch-black eyes, which transformed into golden vertical pupils. Golden dragon scales covered his slender neck, limbs, and torso like golden armor. Simultaneously, a deep purple spirit ring rose from beneath his feet, circling his body with a magnificent radiance. Second spirit ability, Golden Dragon God Transformation. Golden Dragon God Transformation increases all attributes by 100% with no negative side effects, lasting for 1 hour. All attributes referred to the 5 major attributes: strength, speed, spirit, power, defense, and attack. Compared to Yu Tianheng's self-buff technique, it was countless times stronger. As the second spirit ability was unleashed, Qin Yuan's already daunting presence surged terrifyingly once more. Those cold, majestic golden pupils were like 2 concentrated golden suns, dazzling and eye-catching. The golden dragon scales on his body became harder and more brilliant, turning into a radiant gold as if his golden dragon armor had undergone an evolution. Yu Tianheng, who was close at hand, saw the sneer and mockery freeze on his face. His pupils abruptly contracted to the size of needlepoints as he cried out in horror, "What? Isn't your spirit a sword? How can it be?" Almost everyone in the audience stood up abruptly, dumbfounded. Even Qin Ming, Du Guyan, Song Qingshuang, and the others were frozen in place with shock, like statues, motionless. Ling Tian's spirit was actually not a sword. Staring coldly at the horrified Yu Tianheng, Qin Yuan said expressionlessly, "Who told you my spirit was a sword?" A cold light flashed in his golden pupils as he stomped his foot, shattering the floor tiles. Force rose from the ground, passed through his legs and waist, and twisted into a burst of explosive energy that crashed out through his right fist like a swung iron hammer. Boom! Under the terrifying boost of the Golden Dragon God Transformation, Qin Yuan's speed was incredibly fast. Yu Tianheng could only watch in terror as the fist slammed into his chest at the Shanzhong acupoint. There were no fancy tricks, just pure physical penetration. The opponent's eyes bulged, and he let out a shrill scream as he was sent flying off the ground. His back hitting the floor with a dull thud like a torn sack of grain, Yu Tianheng spat out blood and slid over 10 meters across the floor, nearly falling off the arena stage. "What?" incredulous cries rang out from the surroundings. Yu Tianheng, who possessed the top-tier beast spirit blue lightning tyrant dragon, had a spirit power as high as rank 39 and was hailed as the #1 genius of Heaven Du City, actually couldn't even withstand a single move. Qin Ming's eyes widened until they almost bulged out and his entire body was trembling. The student he valued most had been so easily and heavily injured by an opponent of the same level. Douluo Yan and the other members of the Imperial fighting team cried out in alarm. Their powerful captain couldn't even block a single strike. In the second-floor VIP room, Song Qingshuang's beautiful eyes suddenly brightened. Looking at that heroic figure standing proudly as if clad in golden battle armor, her heart throbbed wildly and her delicate lips parted slightly. "So handsome." Qin Yuan walked slowly toward Yu Tianheng, who had fallen at the edge of the stage and was struggling desperately to get up but couldn't, spitting out blood instead. With his pale face full of shock, disbelief, and resentment, Yu Tianheng lay on the ground like a dog, gritting his teeth and trying to prop himself up. Suddenly a pair of black shoes appeared in his field of vision. His expression froze and he looked up with difficulty. He saw the youth wearing a golden dragon mask and covered in golden dragon scales. Those brilliant and cold golden pupils were looking down at him from above, and he said without any emotional fluctuation, "Do you admit defeat?" Yu Tianheng's pale face stiffened. The two of them locked eyes for a long time before he finally lowered his head slowly, like a servant prostrating before a king. His body trembled slightly, and a grinding sound came from his tightly clenched teeth. After a long while, he squeezed 3 words out from between his teeth with great difficulty. I lose." Hearing these 3 words, everyone gasped. Especially Qin Ming, Douluo Yan, and the others who knew well how proud Yu Tianheng was. Their expressions were complicated. For a genius of a generation to lower his head to another peer in public, what a humiliating thing. In the second-floor VIP room, Song Qingshuang watched the scene below with sparkling eyes. Looking at the man who had forced even Yu Tianheng to bow his head, she murmured softly, "A man like this is the only one worthy of me entrusting my life to." As she spoke, she couldn't help but think of her former fiancé again and said with disdain, compared to Ling Tian, that Qin Yuan is simply an eyesore. He's not even fit to carry Ling Tian's shoes. To think he actually dreamed of marrying me. Disgusting. At the mention of Ling Tian's name, the disdain in her eyes and on her face vanished instantly, replaced by a look of admiration. Now that Ling Tian had entered her world, she couldn't even stand the suitors she used to think were decent. Even the legitimate son of a duke was beneath her notice. Her mind was now filled with images of herself standing together with Ling Tian. Seeing Yu Tianheng bow his head, Qin Yuan was not one to be relentlessly aggressive and withdrew from his spirit possession state. He turned his head to look at the silent surroundings. Everywhere he looked were dumbfounded, stunned, and shocked faces, like a series of statues. Shaking his blood-stained right hand, he turned and walked toward the edge of the stage. "Can you tell me, what exactly is your spirit?" Yu Tianheng's weak and unwilling voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Qin Yuan didn't stop and said without looking back, "Golden Dragon." Watching Qin Yuan's receding back, Yu Tianheng muttered those 2 words under his breath, "Golden Dragon." Suddenly, he gave a bitter smile. "As expected, it's a dragon-type spirit. As a direct descendant of the blue lightning tyrant dragon, I actually lost to a dragon-type spirit." Qin Yuan didn't know and didn't care about Yu Tianheng's reaction. He had already left the Soul Arena. Keenly sensing that there were powerful experts tailing him, he showed no reaction. He entered the inn closest to the Heaven Du Imperial Palace, booked a room, closed the doors and windows tightly, and then used teleportation to return directly to the palace. When the experts who had sensed Qin Yuan's aura suddenly vanish burst in to investigate, they were all stunned on the spot. Where was the person? The news of Ling Tian instantly defeating Yu Tianheng in a crushing manner spread throughout Heaven Du City overnight like a violent storm, and began to diffuse outward at an incredible speed. Countless factions wanted to recruit and befriend this young genius. They all knew that such a figure was destined to become a titled Douluo in the future, and not just any ordinary titled Douluo. Being able to form a connection with such a person would surely bring infinite benefits in the future. But unfortunately, since leaving after defeating Yu Tianheng that night, Ling Tian never appeared again. No one knew his whereabouts, as if he had vanished from this world entirely. Inside the Heaven Du Imperial Palace, Emperor Xue Ye was full of praise for Ling Tian. He sighed to Qian Renxue, "This Ling Tian is truly a peerless genius rarely seen in 100 years. If we can recruit this person, the position of our Heaven Du royal family will become even more stable. Once this boy grows up, even the Star Luo Empire and Spirit Hall will be wary of our Heaven Du Empire. We must find this boy and recruit him at any cost." Finally, Emperor Xue Ye spoke with heavy emphasis. Qian Renxue nodded deeply in agreement. Then she suddenly said with regret, "If only Xiao Yuan could have even half of Ling Tian's talent, how good would that be? HMPH, don't mention that trash to me." Emperor Xue Ye snorted coldly, his tone carrying a hint of dissatisfaction and anger. As Qin Jian's son, he actually failed to inherit Qin Jian's top-tier spirit. Instead, it mutated into a trash spirit. He is simply a worthless piece of trash. Royal father Xiao Yuan is your own nephew. How can you disparage him like this? Qian Renxue said, suppressing her anger. I do not have such a trash nephew. Leaving behind those cold words, Emperor Xue Ye turned and walked away. Chapter 20, Ning Rongrong. Qian Renxue returned to the Eastern Palace. Thinking about Emperor Xue Ye's belittling of Qin Yuan, she smashed her desk in a fit of rage, sending things flying everywhere. That old thing is looking for death. He's belittled my Xiao Yuan time and again. I'll kill him tomorrow. Qian Renxue's chest heaved violently, her face full of fury, as if Emperor Xue Ye had committed some unforgivable sin. Young lady, you mustn't. Right then, two figures appeared in the room like ghosts and hurriedly stepped forward to dissuade her. How can we let Spirit Hall's years of planning be ruined by a moment of anger? Young lady, your foundation is not yet completely stable. Emperor Xue Ye cannot die yet. Porcupinefish Douluo and Snake Lance Douluo tried their best to persuade her. It took a tremendous effort to finally pull Qian Renxue back from the brink of irrational rage. I'll let that damn old thing live for a few more years. Sooner or later I will slaughter him with my own hands to vent the hatred in my heart, Qian Renxue said through gritted teeth. It was clearly Qin Yuan whom Emperor Xue Ye had looked down upon with such disdain, yet it was as if she were the direct victim. After a long time having calmed her resentful emotions, she turned to look at Porcupinefish Douluo and Snake Lance Douluo. You both know about the matter regarding Ling Tian, right? Porcupinefish Douluo and Snake Lance Douluo nodded. Your next mission is to find Ling Tian. I want to personally win him over, make him loyal to me rather than the Heaven Du Imperial family or that woman. Qian Renxue spoke with a stern and majestic tone. Porcupinefish Douluo and Snake Lance Douluo exchanged a look and nodded seriously, their figures vanishing into thin air like ghosts once more. After they left, Qian Renxue was the only one left in the room. She walked out the door and looked in the direction where Qin Yuan was, her gaze deep, her voice faint yet resolute. Xiao Yuan, as long as I am here, even if you cannot become a powerful spirit master in this life, I will not let you suffer the slightest grievance. As she spoke, her tone suddenly became incredibly gentle. It won't be long now, Xiao Yuan. Just wait for me a few more years, and by then no one on the entire continent will be able to bully you. Qin Yuan sat in the courtyard, lost in thought. What exactly is sword heart? He had sought out several sword masters recently and gained some insights after sparring, but he still had no clue about that ethereal sword heart. There was no other reason than the fact that in the entire Heavendu city, there wasn't a single swordsman who had comprehended sword heart and stepped into the realm of a sword Tao Grandmaster. He, a person at the half-step sword Tao Grandmaster realm, was already at the pinnacle of the sword Tao in Heavendu city. After pondering bitterly for a long time as usual, he still had no lead, so he simply stopped thinking about it. Forget it. Anyway, Rongrong and the others are coming over tomorrow. Senior Sword Douluo will surely be following them. I'll just ask him then. Qin Yuan's furrowed brows finally relaxed. Standing on either side were the elegant and refined Bai Dai and the curvaceous Hong Yue. Seeing their young master finally stop thinking, they immediately stepped forward to serve him. One massaged his head from behind while the other massaged his body from the front. Qin Yuan lay back in the chair, comfortably closing his eyes slightly as he enjoyed the attentive service of the two beauties. Not long after he closed his eyes, he suddenly remembered something. With his eyes still shut, he asked lazily, "What time is it now?" Reporting to young master, "It is already 4 in the afternoon." Bai Dai, who was gently massaging his temples from behind, said softly, "It's already this late." Qin Yuan snapped his eyes open and immediately flipped himself up, leaving the two beautiful maids to stare at each other in confusion. "You two go back and rest." Without giving the two maids an explanation, Qin Yuan strode out of the courtyard and disappeared to parts unknown. The two beauties were left standing there looking at each other. Meanwhile, outside the Heavendu Imperial Palace, a luxurious carriage drawn by 3 white horses slowly came to a stop before the palace gates. After it stopped, a refined middle-aged man stepped down from the carriage. Following behind him was a beautiful young girl with a noble temperament and a slender figure. She had long, jet-black hair that was as glossy as silk, cascading down to her shapely buttocks. Asterisk swish asterisk. Just then a white shadow descended from the sky. That white shadow was an old man dressed in a spotless snow-white robe. His hair and beard were all white, with his long silver hair neatly combed back. He had an ancient look, yet his face was as smooth as a baby's. The old man's expression was very indifferent. His eyes seemed not to see anything around him as he just stood there quietly without speaking. Yet just by standing there, he still gave off a feeling of being the sole sovereign of all things in heaven and earth. "Grandpa Sword," the girl called out, her voice as clear and pleasant as a silver bell. The old man's indifferent expression instantly melted like snow, and he gave the beautiful girl a kind and charitable smile. Rongrong. The 3 of them were indeed the ones who were supposed to arrive tomorrow. Ning Fengjie, the sect master of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School, Ning Rongrong, the young sect mistress of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School, and the sword Douluo Chen Xin. Not long after Qian Renxue, having heard the report from a servant, arrived at the palace gates. With the gentle smile of a refined gentleman, she welcomed the three of them into the palace and brought them before Emperor Xue Ye. After meeting with Emperor Xue Ye and chatting for a while, the three of them prepared to leave. Qian Renxue had not forgotten about Qin Yuan's matter. Walking out of the grand hall, she smiled at Ning Fengzhai and said, "Teacher, how long do you plan to stay this time? I'd like to make some arrangements." "Haha, I mainly came this time to discuss some matters with Emperor Xue Ye. We've just finished talking. Once I complete the second task, I'll be ready to return to the sect." Ning Fengzhai laughed upon hearing this. "Daddy, I haven't seen Brother Yuan yet." Hearing that Ning Fengzhai was leaving so soon, Ning Rongrong, who had agreed with him on the way to stay for a while, pouted and protested in dissatisfaction. Qian Renxue's heart skipped a beat upon hearing this, and her brows furrowed imperceptibly. Even her gentle smile became a bit unnatural. But Ning Fengzhai acted as if he hadn't heard his daughter's words and simply smiled. "The second task is to find Ling Tian and have a word with him." As expected, Ning Fengzhai won't pass up the chance to win over a top-tier genius like Ling Tian, Qian Renxue thought, not at all surprised. However, since even she couldn't find Ling Tian right now, Ning Fengzhai was likely out of luck, but she wished for exactly that. It wasn't that she was afraid of Ning Fengzhai winning over Ling Tian, but rather she was afraid that this little girl Ning Rongrong had designs on her Xiao Yuan. It's best if they leave quickly. The sooner, the better. But before they left, she still had to have the sword Douluo give her Xiao Yuan some guidance. It seemed her Xiao Yuan's sword Tao had hit a bottleneck, and he was troubled by it. How could she bear to see the Xiao Yuan she had raised herself frowning in distress? Thus Qian Renxue turned to look at the sword Douluo, who had remained silent throughout, and said with a light smile, "Senior sword Douluo, I wonder if I might ask you to do something. Afterward, King will surely offer a generous reward." Hearing this, the sword Douluo looked puzzled, and Ning Fengzhai and Ning Rongrong also looked on with curiosity. "Please speak, Your Highness the Crown Prince," the sword Douluo said solemnly. Even though he was a noble titled Douluo, he could not be impolite when dealing with the Crown Prince of a nation. "This matter is a simple task for Senior Sword Douluo." Qian Renxue smiled and said, "Please give Xiao Yuan some guidance in the sword Tao."